we talked about how Kirby Smart is perceived off the top of the show. Sporting News, the latest outlet to kind of come out with its ranking, and Smart always ranks in the top 10 on lists like this. And yet for some Georgia fans, I think 7th, according to the Sporting News, that's never quite high enough, given the fact that Smart does really well head-to-head against coaches that are ranked close to him or ahead of him on a list like this. And there seems to be this lingering perception that Smart hasn't fully proven himself yet as an on-field coach, as a tactician during the games. No one can dispute his management of the Georgia program, but the buttons you push during the game. What do you make of that, to the extent that does seem to exist in the atmosphere around Georgia and Kirby Smart?
I thought he pushed the buttons pretty well in the Rose Bowl in 2017. Yeah. They stuck with their game plan, but even though they were Oklahoma was running up and down the field. Now, see, Brandon, I don't buy into any of this. It's a narrative where people hook onto it, and that's the thing about the media. They hook on the narrative sometimes, and the idea that, boy, this is the window for Kirby Smart, and if he doesn't win it this year, then the opportunity is going to pass by. I don't buy any of it. The idea of being a very successful head coach is to put your team on a consistent basis in the conversation. And Kirby Smart has absolutely done that. I don't know what's going to happen this year. I know that Georgia's good enough to win every single game they play. Will they? Guess what? We're going to find out.
Yeah, I think to further the conversation, I think one of the dangers sometimes is when a point gets oversimplified, and I think that Kirby Smart's been kind of put in this box. And admittedly, I've looked at some things from a similar vein there as well of, well, the one thing that seems to be different than Kirby and his team in comparison to Nick Saban or Dabo Swinney or even Ryan Day at Ohio State is this lack of explosive offense. And so therefore, I think there are some people that kind of view that Smart's either so far inability to transform this Georgia offense or hesitation to really join the trend that seems to be happening around him, that seems to be a cudgel that ends up getting used against Smart, that until this program at Georgia scoring 45 points a game, some people are going to assume that something about Smart's personality or his coaching prowess is the reason that's not happening.
I think those people that feel that way are really overthinking this. I get it down to the basics. Georgia was a top 10 team last season. If there had been a 12-team college football playoff, Georgia would have been in the playoffs. Now, were they happy with their offense when the quarterback play was inconsistent before J.T. Daniels got ready? Okay, sure. I would not argue that at all. But this idea that there's some sort of mental block that's keeping Georgia from realizing their potential, I just don't buy it.
When you look around at the Georgia situation here this year, I mean, it's kind of interesting that you saw a lot from J.T. Daniels a year ago, and yet it was a somewhat small sample size. You obviously had plenty of reason to think this Georgia wide receiving core could have a breakout year, and I think that remains true. The George Pickens injury from the spring is clearly a setback for all of that. I mean, Georgia probably does need to score more points to win a national championship. How set up do you think UGA is to be able to do that here this season?
Well, first of all, we'd love to have George Pickens. Okay,
right.
He is a difference maker. He stretches the field. He's a big play guy. But I look at the Georgia depth chart, and they're very good receivers on that. And now, to your point, does Georgia need to score more points? Yes, everybody needs to score more points. I sat in Nick Saban's office 4 years ago when he sort of laid out the idea of how they were going to have to score more points, and son of a gun, he hires Lane Kiffin. So every coach is going through this and realize, let's see, Alabama led the SEC in scoring defense last year. Mm-hmm. They gave up 19 points a game, okay? Nick Saban was asked if last year was his best team. He said, well, no, because my 2011 defense gave up 9 points a game.
Right.
But the game has changed, and coaches, Saban realized it, and he changed, and Kirby Smart's going to do the same.